Hello, you're watching TVP World and welcome to World Talks. My name is Sasha Farbach. Tensions are rising between Hungary and Sweden after Swedish Prime Minister Kristersson criticized Viktor Orbán for cozying up to Russia, highlighting Hungary's historical struggle for freedom in 1956 and much more. So we'll discuss all this controversy and other key issues facing Hungary with our guest, Mihály Rosonczy-Kovács, International Director at the Nézőpont Institute. Thank you so much for joining us here. Welcome to TVP World.
Thank you very much. Dziękuję.
Mihály, let's begin with this spat. It's spilled into social media. It began about crime and migration. So what are we to take from this spat between the Swedish Prime Minister and the Prime Minister of Orbán? What does it say about where Hungary is headed?
Those tensions, diplomatic tensions, could have been observed also throughout the last month, years. Generally speaking, the Hungarian stance is misinterpreted in the, let's say, mainstream media. If we take, for example, the last week's events, then Hungary was among the first who, and also Viktor Orbán, who said that the Polish are allies, and Hungary grants full solidarity. Also, Hungary is taking part in the Sky Shield program, so there's no question about where Hungary stands, a firm member of the NATO and the EU.
If I can just interrupt you on that one, Mihály, I grant your points there, but I want to ask you, you said it's been misrepresented. You mentioned that Hungary is a firm ally. You mentioned NATO. Now, I do remember an exception that was granted to Hungary from the previous NATO Secretary General, that there would be no involvement of Hungary coming to the aid of Ukraine. So that kind of redefines solidarity for me. What I'm also interested in is just your take on, you said solidarity. Now, with oil and gas, for instance, that's a very different story. So why is it then that on that case, Hungary is still on a very different path, counter to what solidarity in Europe is all about?
If you allow me, I would go back to what you mentioned, because it's important that when that exception was granted that you mentioned, it was about countries who were willing to take actions outside the territory of the NATO. And Hungary's perception is that NATO is a defense alliance that manifested very well last week, where we saw that the allies were ready to also to sacrifice for the Polish people, and at the same time, at that time when there were plans to go beyond the territory of NATO, Hungary said that we don't want to stop the others to take actions, but we would like to keep us to the treaties and to solidify the NATO as a defense alliance. At the same time, the strategic goals between Poland and Hungary are identical also regarding the current geopolitics, that is to have a free, sovereign Ukraine that can serve also as a guarantee of our security. So to put it short, it's worth really to read and to listen directly to the Hungarian politicians, Hungarian leaders, and not those interpretations. And that's why I'm very grateful for this opportunity for TVP World, that sometimes comes from political adversaries that are adversaries not because of geopolitical issues, but other European or other current political issues.
Let me ask you, and we also thank you for joining us again, and we do appreciate the difference in opinion, but I do want to ask a bit further. As you said, that the strategic, these are your words, strategic goals of Poland and Hungary are aligned. Now, I want to ask what you mean by that, because if we're looking at oil sanctions, for instance, from Russia, they're very different. In fact, Hungary is still increasing its imports from Russia, as is Slovakia, by the way. That hasn't changed, although there are alternative routes. So how do we justify this? And I haven't even touched on the economy in Hungary, which is not doing well. So this is key. So how do you see that kind of difference here? Because those two goals are not on the same line.
Yes, so that's why I said that the strategic goal is identical, but there has been a difference of approach as for the tools, how to arrive to a geopolitical architecture that guarantees the security to our region, and that part of the NATO that is most exposed to the danger, and that is our region, and also history teaches us. And the Hungarian approach was always to seek for immediate ceasefire and peace talks, whereas, and also Hungary showed comprehension towards the Baltic states and Poland, that they also do historical reasons, they have other reflexes. As for the gas and oil, for Hungary, the means are way more limited than to those countries who have access to sea. No matter, Hungary has built almost all the interconnectors throughout the last years, and also contracted LNG from possible sources, but as a landlocked country, its possibilities are way more limited. Let me recall that, for example, before years already, it was not the Hungarian who, because of whom the Nabucco pipeline was not established. So Hungary was always striving to diversify its needs, but inherited from the Soviet era conditions that are not to change overnight, and also the approach is different because it goes back to 2008 and 9, where Poland wanted that Ukraine joins the NATO. Viktor Orbán says that at that time it was possible because Russia was weak enough. The NATO was on a surging path and could have taken Ukraine to NATO, but it was ultimately, as we know, the German who said no to Ukraine, and that made Hungary rethink that apparently there is a new geopolitical architecture.
Right, but I mean, in terms of how different, I'll have to interrupt you, I'm sorry, Mihály, but in terms of the way different membership paths of NATO, that's a different story. But what has happened, I'm glad you mentioned history for a moment, and it does teach us that Hungary does share that experience with Poland in very much the same way. This is also what the Prime Minister of Sweden criticizes, how actually Orbán can sit and have coffee with someone who's actually doing exactly the same thing what happened in '56, rather worse. You said, just quickly, on the means are limited for Hungary in terms of oil and gas. It's been well over 3 years diversification is there. That's something the Czechs have done. There are ways through the Adria pipeline, LNG. I don't want to dwell too much on gas, but I want to tie it in with the economy. The TISA party at the moment is polling ahead. It's about 15 percentage point ahead of Orbán's party. There seems to be a certain type of momentum here. Much of the qualms, it seems also, let's look at the economy for a moment, because if we're looking at that, if we're looking at the data, Hungary is not doing well. Revisions have been going down, 2.4% of growth, now 0.4% for this year. It's the only country in the region that is struggling this way. So if Orbán is doing the right thing, why is the pain here so much in the Hungarian economy?
Just one sentence, if you allow me, to oil. So, and to why to speak. So, in a geopolitical situation as tense as it is important to seek a dialogue that we see from the President of the United States. Without a dialogue, without communication.
But on that point, though, you said dialogue. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Dialogue. It's exactly coming from Orbán's friend, Donald Trump, who said also that all NATO member states must stop imports of Russian gas. That's coming from a friend of Hungary, but yet Hungary still continues to do so. But I do want to ask about the economy. It's still in a bad position.
And also, yes, okay. And as for those polls, I just have fresh numbers because I have the polls of Nézőpont. In an election this Sunday, currently we see 46% for Fidesz and 38% for TISA party. But I also have not our numbers. The McLaughlin and Associates very this day has a new opinion poll saying that Fidesz would win an election with 43 to 37%. The polls you quoted, and it's also important to speak, and that they are circulating, are speaking, are measuring the active voters. So they speak how 4 million, that we have around 8 million of Hungarian voters. And these polls who say that the TISA, so this biggest opposition leftist party, is ahead, are only measuring these active voters, whereas on the election, there will be 5.5 millions around, according to the experiences, 5.5
All right, so
million
if polls are
voters,
percentage points, you're right. There are different sources. That's true. Ours that we've quoted are from Reuters. They're independent polls. There's your polls. But the fact is, Mr. Magyar is a contender against Viktor Orbán. Viktor Orbán does seem to very much know that. No matter the outcome, we don't know that yet, of course, but there have been also allegations of corruption. If we're looking at a particular also, I think, real estate example, there's, I'm not going to pronounce the name here, I'm sorry if I don't say it correctly, Hatvan Puszta, this farm, which is in the ownership of the Orbán family. Viktor Orbán's father purchased this. This has become an object of corruption, of allegations. What do you think of items like this? And there are others. Corruption is a problem. The economy is a problem. How do you respond to those claims?
It's very interesting to see, and for the Polish viewers, those themes that recur from the election campaign of Prime Minister Donald Tusk from 2023 and the current leftist campaign in Hungary. So basically, both of them, both Prime Minister Tusk at that time and Péter Magyar, has to cover and to attract a very heterogeneous camp of voters. That's why instead of giving a clear vision or a clear agenda, they are focusing on triggering negative emotions. So everything is bad, the state is failing, the economy is going down, everything is bad. If you remember, law and justice is the bad ship, there's war, and there will be a smiling Poland if we want. And Péter Magyar has the same challenge, so to attract very heterogeneous voters from radical left.
I think the one thing, I'll have to unfortunately run out of time. One thing is clear, that there's still lots of debate as this continued coverage continues. And we'll, of course, carry on this discussion with you and anyone here on TVP World. Look, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Mihály Rosonczy-Kovács, appreciate the time. Thank you. And thank you for watching World Talks, but stay tuned, much more coming up right here on TVP World, so don't go away.